Hey everybody, thank you for joining in today. Welcome to Primary Tackles, Tips and Tactics. We're going to talk a little bit about jerkbaits today. So this is something that I kind of hold near and dear to my heart. You know, jerkbaits come in all kinds of different sizes, different shapes, some have rattles, some don't have rattles. Some are really more little bitty smaller baits. There's all kinds of different ones. You know, in the store we carry a lot of Strike King and the RCs, the Rick Fun Lucky Strike ones. We carry. We're working on getting Mega Bass back in here. You know, that is one of my favorites. Y'all have seen videos with me before concerning Mega Bass. So we're going to talk about a bunch of different stuff today. We're going to talk about some different baits. We're going to talk a little bit about when to use them, how to use them, what's special about them, and why you should use them. And there's some different things about each one that I think makes them better. So let's just start with when do we fish them. I mean, you know, it's a great springtime bait. It moves a little slower. You can still cover a lot of water, but have a bait that actually will sit in front of our nose for a minute without having to move it a whole lot. It kind of lends to that colder water kind of thing. But I tell you, you can fish them all year round, really. I've caught fish as late as I've caught fish all year. I mean, I really have. I've caught them all times of the year. It just kind of depends on what you're trying to do, and you kind of have to kind of match the hatch or kind of go through the process of, hey, what are they looking for today? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So one of my favorite cold water baits, that 48 to 52 degree water bait specifically, is a Mega Bass 110, and there's a lot of really great things about a Mega Bass 110. This is a I think it's a table rock shad. It's got a little bit of a purple back on it, but you see how it's kind of translucent with a little bit of coloring through the side. That's a really good one. You can see that's one I fished with. I've still got line tied on it. Some of my favorite colors when it comes to jerk baits are these more translucent colors that you can actually see through. You can get, the fish can't see them as well, and you know that's a big 110 Magnum. Those bigger baits have a really key component, but we're going to talk a little bit about that. But the Mega Bass 110, the beauty of that bait is, you know, you're throw it out there, reel it down, twitch, and it's going to basically sit and suspend in the water column. The 110 Magnums will sink very, very slowly, but a standard 110 is just going to kind of sit right there. But one of the beauties of it is if you are fishing it correctly, a 110 Magnum will literally do this right here and go side to side to side and almost stay right in position, just barely floating, about like this, just moving around. But the catch to that is to fish it on a very slack line, and that's one of my big hints for the day. Is I want to see a lot of bow in my line, and what I'm doing is I'm doing a lot of line watching, like you do when you're throwing a worm or anything else. You're looking for that line to just make that one big jerk and begin to tighten up, and that's when you just take up your slack and I start reeling and pull into it, and we'll catch them. I've got a video that I posted on YouTube a few years back, and it was fishing a 110 Magnum. I'd been fishing a regular 110 at Pickwick and really wasn't catching them. Caught a big old skipjack, and that's what keyed me in on what to switch over to. So if you get a chance, go to our YouTube channel. You'll see it there as well. You know, another bait that's really popular is the KVD jerk baits. Those are by Strike King. Of course, Strike King is a very popular bait around here. They've got a good one. Another one we sell a lot of is the Lucky Strike RCs. Those have an actual rattle in them, so they make a lot of extra noise. I like those. You know, some of the other really popular ones, you know, Rapala makes their little, they make everything from a small one to a big one. Lucky Craft makes a really good one. This is an old classic. I carry a bunch of these in my box. These are Smithwicks. I like this bait when it gets a little warmer. So that 55 to 65, 62 range, when you got fish sitting on a bed and you can't quite get them to react to something, these things work really, really well. I like to bang them around little stumps and stuff during the spring. I carry, that gold copper colored one, a fire tiger, of course, and of course a clown is another one of my favorite go-to colors. And this color is a really great smallmouth color, but those color baits, those are really good for those areas where you've got a lot of stumps and stuff. I really like those. They're a high floater. They float up real fast. And then, of course, the longer build baits. You've got the 110 plus. You've got a 110 plus 1. This is, I think, golly, I want to say this is probably hang on, I can read it, maybe. And I lied. I can't read it. So, anyway, but, got a longer build. This bait will get down to 5 or 6 feet pretty easily. You can maybe even get down to 8 or 9. But the longer build square jerk baits, you can get them down a little deeper than you can a standard jerk bait, just by reeling it down. It reels down just like a regular crankbait, and it gets down there and it'll get to where it needs to get to. So, but all those baits, those are just some. I mean, and you say, well, how am I supposed to know how to throw which one, or which one should I be throwing? Typically, what I do is I'll go through a few different ones. If it's 48 to 52 degrees, I'm going to be throwing a 110 Magnum. If it's over 55 degrees, I'm going to throw that Smithwick Rogue, especially if I'm in shallower water. I want something that I can kind of jerk around and get it where I can still keep it in sight, where I can see it, and let it float on back up to the surface. I'll literally have fish come up and swirl on that thing when it's 6-7 inches under the water and just annihilate it, suck it in, and it's it's almost like a topwater bite in the spring. That's a fun way to fish those. The 110 Magnums, if they're keying on bigger bait. The little small Rapalas, if they're keying on smaller baits. So, and that's the other thing. Always be paying attention to what size bait you have around, what size bait you think the fish are eating, and match up your sizes. But, don't be scared if you're not getting bites on that smaller one, but you're around a lot of small bait. Pick up that bigger one. Maybe they want something that's a little bigger. Maybe they're actually eating on what's eating those smaller bait that you're just not seeing. Another quick tip, and I'm going to put on the product camera for this. This is one of those things that I like to put on the back of every jerkbait that I fish. I do this on topwaters as well, and it's just a little marabou haired treble hook. Match up the size to what you're used to on that particular crankbait, so you don't change the action. But I think it gives it that little look of a fish's tail on the back of the bait. Just gives it a little bit extra enticement. I mean, that's a plain white one. If I'm in some more stained water, I'll go to that little chartreuse and white with some tinsel in it. Same thing with topwater. Do the same thing there too. So those are some good options. That's some different stuff that maybe we haven't talked about before. But yeah, but as you can see, I mean, you see all those I got laying around. I got 2 boxes right here just full of jerk baits that I fish every year. They've all, I'm always having to replace hooks and that kind of thing. That's another thing I want to talk to you about. We were talking about replacing the back hook with the marabou or the tail on it. When you change hook sizes, if you go to a bigger hook or you go to a lighter hook, you're changing the action of that bait. Sometimes a bait will ride nose down or ride pretty buoyant, pretty in the middle of the road, but then you put a bigger hook right here, and what you just did is you just pulled the nose of that bait down because that hook weighs just a little bit more than the one on the back, and you'll pull the nose down. Sometimes that's what you want. Sometimes you want those looking down. If you want it to ride higher in the water column, you might want to put a hook here so that bill is sitting further up and it's not getting as much action, and you can change the action of the bait. So that's some different little tricks and tips to help you catch a few more fish if you want to try some of those different things. What else? Line size. I mean, that's another one. I have guys that they're going to scale down to 8, 10, 12 pound fluoro. What that does for you is it allows you the opportunity to get that bait a little bit deeper. That fluoro cuts through water a lot better. It doesn't float. If you want to keep that bait further up in the water column, use a mono. Increase the size of the mono, particularly if the water's a little dirtier. That'll force the bait to stay higher up in the water column and it won't run quite as deep. So if you want it up here, mono, heavier line. If you want it down here, fluoro, lighter line. So another quick tip and hint, and take into consideration as you go down in line size, the heavier the cover you're around, the more likely you are to break one off, but also at the same time, the more likely you break one off because you're using a lighter line. So back that drag off, give the fish some time to play it, and just kind of change your tactics up a little bit. Now, it's another thing about these baits, when they're just barely nipping at them, you're just going to catch them right in the back of the mouth with this one hook, and you just got just barely anything holding on to it. When they're really eating it, you'll have it all the way in their mouth, and you'll have 3 sets of hooks in them, and they're not going to go nowhere. So always keep a good pair of pliers, long nose, needle nose pliers, so that you can get to them, or a pair of forceps so that you can get those hooks out of their back of their mouth if they do get it back there. I think that's a lot of my tips and techniques. Some of the places I like to fish and where. I mean, it's kind of an important piece. Where you're really going to be targeting this bait most of the time is early spring or in the fall around shad schools. But you're going to be targeting those 45-degree gravel banks. You're going to be targeting little secondary points, main points next to spawning flats, but not in the back, but towards the front. You're going to be in a little bit deeper water than you would in the spring, later in the spring. So, but the one exception to that rule is the old Smithwick Rogue. Again, you got a bait. It's got some rattles in it. You got a little sound, but it's a high floater, so you can pull it down and you let it float back up. It's a faster moving bait, has a lot of action. The Strike King bait is really similar to that too. So, and so is the RC, the Rick Glenn series and the Lucky Strike. So that's a couple of quick little tips on when and where. Channel swings. I had a trip one time over in the Beach River watershed where I was really targeting all those little places where the ditches came down. We'd been catching them. I caught the stew out of them the day before, and where those ditches would come down and would be deeper, we had a really bad cold front come in during the middle of the night, and those fish had been all around those edges of those banks, had just all moved down into those little drops. And so I would throw the bait. As soon as it would get out over the edge of that drop, you'd have a fish come up, and they weren't really hitting it hard. You knew they weren't real active, but just because it was sitting right over their head, they would come out and they would eat it. Same thing. I did the same thing at Lake Ouachita one year. And one of the things that I tell everybody, and one really important key, is count. Count, count, count. So 1 Mississippi in your pauses, jerk, jerk. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, jerk, 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 and vary up those jerks once, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, different jerks, and just see what elicits a strike, and then change up your counts every once in a while. Sometimes they want it on 2 counts, sometimes they want it on 4 counts, sometimes they want it on 8. Lake Ouachita one year, we had a good little warm front moving in. Fish were biting, but they weren't biting really great. I picked up a big 110 Magnum jerk mega bass, threw it out there, counted it down, got it. I was on a double jerk with a 6 count, and that seemed to be the magic piece. Caught a big 4 or 5 pounder, went down the bank a little bit further, did it again. Boater sitting in the front of the boat. He turned around and looks, and I'm concentrating on this bait. I'm not paying attention to this guy in the front of the boat. He goes, and he could see me counting. He goes, "Well, what's the count?" And I told him it was 6, and immediately he catches a fish. Then he caught him a big walleye right behind that one. But the moral of the story is sometimes it's really about a count, or it's really about the fish looking for something specific. So hope that helped you. This is going to be posted in a few different places, and if you have any questions, reach out to me. Happy to answer them. Thanks. So I want to thank a couple of people real quick. You know, of course, that's why Wilson. They do a lot for us here in the store. BRD Outdoors. You know, if you haven't went on a trip with Billy Ross Doyle, he's guiding on Wolf River, on Pickwick, Kentucky Lake. Does a great job. Super personable. You'll have a ball. That's all I can tell you there. You'll catch them. He's been catching fish around this area for a lot of years. Jeremy and Jimmy from Black Bass Tackle, personal friends of mine, do a lot for me. They help a lot with a lot of this stuff. You're going to start seeing a lot of videos from them too. So if you have any questions, just let us know. Thank you.